Congress is set to now expose what may be the largest censorship system in U.S. history. It is not good. They have been saying that they're just looking for disinformation and they're not violating freedom of speech. This is not true. We know this now from the Twitter files. The Twitter files showed us exactly what was going on. FBI, the FBI has all kinds of people in Twitter, the Justice Department, now CIA, NSA, all people that were employed for the government have gone to work for Google, Facebook, Twitter. FBI is in a bad way, in a really bad way. And what's happening is the FBI is actually, let me use the words of a Twitter staff member. At one point, they complained internally that they are probing and pushing everywhere. So FBI is probing and pushing everywhere inside of these tech giants. So you have executives coming from the government. Then you have the outside force of the government. And one of them on the outside suggested in an upcoming meeting, we really need to invite an OGA or other government organization. So the FBI saying we need to have the CIA. And we now know that's what it was, the CIA. The CIA has very strict limits. They cannot gather information or do anything on Americans. But that seems to be out of the window. So you have all of these people working, and while they were trying to tell us that we're going to do a government office on disinformation, they already had one. And they were working through the FITF, the Foreign Influence Task Force. When they got rid of the disinformation thing, they just continued to do it through that organization. They had sent long lists of newspapers, tweets, YouTube videos, and voices that needed to be silenced. And not because of COVID. They were, quote, anti-Ukrainian narratives. So they are shaping what you see. They are policing what you hear, and not just information, but they are policing points of view. This, when your neighbor shouts you down or your neighbor calls you something, that's your neighbor. This is the government. If the government decides to smear you, and this is what they were doing, smearing people, when they smear you, it's done. That's not just your neighbor. That's not just some Joe Blow. It's not even ABC News. It's a coordinated effort. So what's happening? And why does this matter? This matters. And I can't believe I have to try to explain this. I don't think I do to this audience, but let me give you the explanation so you can give it to some of your friends. You remember back in 2008, I had, for the first time in talk radio history, we were fortunate enough to have as an advertiser General Motors. And the team with Rush Limbaugh and everybody, they had been working for years to get General Motors on. I went out, met with General Motors, met with the CEO of General Motors, had tours of the factory, was really very excited about the things that they were doing. But I happened to be at their OnStar room with one of their chief executives, and I said, so you're monitoring everything all the time? Yes. And you could turn the engines off of any car that you wanted? Yes. Wow, I could see that would be great for like an Amber Alert. Well, yes, we shouldn't do that, but yes. Have you done that? Well, okay. What's your line there? Well, we're not with the government. Okay. And the minute that they canceled their hydrogen cars and took bailout money and were beholden to the United States government, I canceled that contract. I canceled it. It, at that point, could have almost cost me my career. It was a very big deal. And I said, I can't voice for General Motors. And it killed me because I loved them. That was, 2007 and 8, and how things have changed. You now, every car tracks all of your movements. Your movements are also tracked through your streaming services, your web browser, your social media, search histories, online ads, ebooks, fitness trackers, your Apple Watch, everything with the word smart or interactive in it tracks you. Well, I don't care. It's bad enough that the IRS tracks you. You're also being tracked by apps involving e-commerce, rideshare, e-banking, not just credit cards, but also the loyalty cards like the kind you get at your grocery store. This isn't drone surveillance. It's much more personal. It's facial recognition to open your phone. It's voice recognition to start your smart TV. We are all connected to an unbelievable amount of information that can be tracked and mined. The Library of Alexandria, the greatest library ever, 500,000 books. Today, the amount of trackable information on you is roughly the equivalent of 400 copies of the Library of Alexandria. That's how much information is out in the digital world about you. We live in an information society. The guy who was the father of cybernetics, he said, quote, "The world of the future will be even more demanding as it struggles against the limitations of our intelligence." He called it the tyranny of information. The better way to say it is there's so much information out there. Modern warfare is all about information and how can you collate? Well, you can't. Used to be called metadata. Can't. But now AI. And you can track this as a war device all the way back to Napoleon. Napoleon used total war. He turned the entire world into a battlefield. His fight was global. Century after him, we have 2 global wars. They paralyze the entire world. And war involves supremacy of decision, strategy. He was also the first to use aerial surveillance, a new kind of espionage. Suddenly, warfare was secretive. It was invisible. Military violence became clandestine, the task of secret police, an army, quote, army of the interior, end quote. It was surveillance and disinformation. War could take place behind the scenes. Nobody had to know there was even a fight going on. It was a game the elites could play on their own, but through society, not on the battlefield. Now, that doesn't sound strange anymore because that's the way of everyday life. We are living inside of a battlefield, and the new war machine is invisible. Modern warfare is about depriving the enemy, containing their movement. Listen to this. Warfare, depriving the enemy, and containing their movement. The ability to move is the mark of freedom. This is why everything is being centralized and you are being boxed in. In 2014, Stephen Hawking and several other scientists wrote an editorial about the threat of artificial intelligence. He said, whereas the short-term impact of AI depends on who controls it, the long-term impact depends on whether it can be controlled at all. all of us should ask ourselves what we can do now to improve the chances of reaping the benefits and avoiding the risks, end quote. So here's the funny thing. Surveillance and disinformation. We like to think surveillance is designed to get rid of disinformation. But actually, it's two agents on the same side, two con men pretending to fight. I'll explain in 60 seconds. Connection between surveillance and disinformation. Two con men pretending to fight. They're both working for intelligence agencies and secret services. And their job is to confuse us, to dumb us down, to believe the correct illusion, the one they want you to believe. It's supposed to tire us out and make us outraged. Who feels tired and outraged? The funny thing about disinformation is that it's a counterattack. It's an assault on truth. It's the way to silence. But in order for it to work, intelligence elites have to know what we think, what we feel, and what we believe. They have to be able to monitor the effects and also see where we're headed. The more predictive it can become, the more absolute the mind prison becomes. Surveillance is how we lose privacy and our personal information. The more that they can gather on us and know what's his heart rate when we say these things. What does his blood pressure do when he reads this? All of these things are either being tracked now or are within the next 12 months able to be tracked. Our information gives powerful people more power, scary power. And the intelligence communities use that information to make disinformation. And here's the weird part. They're doing it right in front of us. They're telling us they're doing it. It turns out Big Brother isn't monitoring us because we're doing all the work for him. We are the experts at self-surveillance. We do it with a smile for the sake of convenience. We surrender our privacy and our freedoms. And totalitarianism is on the rise. Our future world is a world of surveillance, non-stop surveillance, more and more. Watched, scanned, monitored, ranked, punished, spied on, evaluated. All of this is happening. And the key phrase to watch for from politicians and global leaders is China is the new model. When they say for instance, he talked about cancer research and we started a new organization. That was not about health research. That was about research on how to get more information from you. The entire globe is being designed with ranchers and sheep. We are the sheep, they are the ranchers. And they can control us if they can monitor everything. And that's what's being built right now. We're going to get into that next hour, and it will blow your mind on how close this is. But nobody's looking for actual equal justice. You'll notice the ranchers get away with murder. The sheep get away with nothing. Why is that? We're going to talk to Jim Jordan here in just a minute, and he's going to talk to us about the FBI. This is why this is so important. The government must get out of the private sector. And the private sector needs to understand that we're on to them. We know it. And then we have to make decisions. Are we still going to give all of this information to everybody? Why is it no one? These companies have made billions, hundreds of billions of dollars, trillions of dollars on our information. Why is it there hasn't been a single representative of you that has stood up and said, you know what? They're going to have to start paying for this information. I'm not just going to give it to them anymore. Their excuse used to be, well, it's metadata. Well, now with AI, metadata can track you.